hour right now, so we want to make sure that we get ourselves going. We want to welcome you to our fun webinar, your reusable brown bag lunch grab bag webinar. Kira and I just want to introduce ourselves before we get going today. I'm Kristen Poppleton. I'm the Director of Programs for Climate Generation.
And I'm Kira Liu. I am the Youth Program Specialist with Climate Generation.
And we are both super excited to be doing this webinar today because it's really just staff initiative that we have been talking about a lot for a while. And we thought we should share this with other folks too and get them excited about it as well, and also hear and share how we're nervous about it as well. So I am really excited to start a zero waste challenge next week because I need goals. I'm a goal-oriented person, and so having this to start out and try, I think, is going to be fun. I'm super nervous though because I am one of a family of 4 and I'm a perfectionist, and so I want to make sure that everything is waste free, and it's just going to happen with a 12 and a 14-year-old and a dog and a husband probably over 10 days. So I'm going to also be gentle on myself in terms of how much I can get done.
Yeah, I'm super excited about this too, just as something that I think we've been talking about in the office for a while and just amongst our staff, but actually getting momentum on this and ready to start this challenge. Something I'm nervous about is, as someone who lives in an apartment and doesn't always have personal control over composting in my building personally, that's been something that I've been trying to figure out the resources for and make my game plan for our actual zero waste challenge. So I'm excited to just see how this plays out. Try it for the first time.
So that said, we are excited that you all have joined us, at least interested in learning about it. And we have 2 awesome speakers lined up to speak in a little bit. Before that, I think I'll ask if Christy and Zaria, if you guys could mute yourselves while we introduce ourselves. The beginning, that'd be awesome. And then for you all, just to let you know, we'll have time for questions at the end. Feel free to pop them in the chat box if you don't want to forget them. And we're going to just go ahead and get things started. Just to give you a little background about us. So Climate Generation, for those of you that maybe aren't aware of us, we were founded by a polar explorer named Will Steger. And Will has been recognized as a leader and eyewitness to the impacts of climate change, which when our organization was just first founded in 2006, was a story that really he was one of the few people telling. But since that time, of course, we've all realized we all have a story to tell. And Will's belief in the power of education and the power of story is really in our DNA, and we love to be able to tell stories, not only of the impacts, but also stories that talk about the future and the solutions that we can employ. So we look to him and his story. Our mission is to empower individuals and their communities to engage in solutions to climate change. And we really see that this is an important work that needs to be done in all sectors, working with youth, working with teachers, working with the public, and with influentials around the state and also around the country. Our work with youth is very powerful. We support youth in their place as they come up with solutions and come up with their own speaking points on how to push our electeds and other officials. We work with teachers, helping them get climate change into the classroom, into the science and the social studies, the language arts classrooms. We really focus on normalizing the conversation around climate change in our public settings. And we see influentials as not just those that we elect, but also businesses around us. And we help really elevate their leadership and help them take action on climate solutions and talking about it. Our vision as we look ahead is a world of resilient communities with equitable solutions to climate change. And this positive solutions focused frame is something we believe is really important for us to get the job done. Before we jump into this, we want to just pull out the 5 key points that I think that are important here. As an organization focused on climate change, we want to acknowledge that climate change is real. It's happening now. Humans' actions are causing it. It's something urgent. We have to do something about it now, but there are solutions, and taking collective action together is one of those key pieces. So why are we as an organization focused on climate change interested in zero waste? Well, there's a number of things. First of all, it actually is fully a climate change issue. It's also a climate justice issue, and as an organization really focused on equitable solutions and an equitable future, we see waste as a huge problem in this respect. Collective action, exclamation point, that is something we believe in, and this is an opportunity for us to do that together. And we believe in making things positive and solutions oriented and fun, which we're hoping this challenge can also be fun. And so when we talk about climate change or waste being a climate change issue, one key fact just to pull out from the many, 99% of plastic comes from fossil fuels. And plastic is connected to climate change because it pollutes at every stage, from the materials extraction to the product production to waste disposal. Knowing this is a key piece of the waste stream. It's a huge issue. Food waste is also a huge piece of the climate change problem. When we think about how much food is actually put into landfills and releasing greenhouse gases, especially methane, this is a huge, very powerful greenhouse gas. We also, as I mentioned, as far as waste being a justice issue, we know that over a 20-year time period, data that was collected found that more than half the people who live within less than 2 miles of a toxic waste facility are people of color. And this is a huge problem in the structure of the country and the infrastructure of how things are set up, and something that we acknowledge is a major problem as well. We're also taking this on because, as I mentioned, collective action is simply what needs to get done, and we see sharing this beyond just our office as an opportunity to do that. And so there's you, and then there's me, and then there's all of us all taking action on waste as a climate change issue. And another reason why, one of our final ones, is we've taken a lot of inspiration from a book called Drawdown over the last year. And Drawdown has really recognized waste as a key solution in dealing with waste. And this is just one of 100 solutions that are highlighted in the book, which I encourage you all to check out their website. It's super interesting and fantastic. But looking at how much we can actually reduce in CO2, as well as financially, by focusing on our waste. And then finally, from a positive perspective, when we think about building this future we want, we have to imagine ourselves there. And by doing this work together, imagining ourselves being zero waste, imagining the steps that we need to get there, I think that this is all a powerful opportunity for us to take part together.
Great. So before we kind of jump into hearing from our guest speakers, we kind of wanted to just lay out what is the zero waste challenge that our staff is going to be doing at Climate Generation. So we will be doing a zero waste challenge for 10 days from March 11th to 20th, and invite you all to join along with us. Our staff will be keeping track of anything that we cannot recycle or compost by keeping that in a mason jar. And that's kind of a way to just visualize how much waste you're producing over that 10-day period. And then we also invite you to share your experience with us on social media. We'll have some of our staff be doing some blogs and posts about what it's like for us to to partake in this challenge, but we also want to hear from you. Invite us to tag us at climategn.org and use the hashtag CGWasteWatchers as a way to track who's joining us in this challenge. And then just to frame this is that we want to really meet people where they're at. Not everyone is ready to try and live 100% waste-free right away, and that's all right. And we want to recognize that you can make your own challenge here and set your own goals, and we invite you to do that along with our staff. So our first speaker is Christy Manning. Christy is a professor in the Environmental Studies Department at Macalester College in St. Paul, Minnesota. Her research and teaching explores the cognitive, social, and situational factors that influence people's behavior and lifestyle choices, and how these choices positively or negatively impact ecological and social systems. Christy was one of the inspirations for us taking on this challenge as a staff, and so we're really excited to have her here to share some of her wisdom with us. And with that, I will pass it over to Christy.
Okay, thank you. And here you can see, Karen, Kristen, you can see the chats that are coming through from people asking questions.
We cannot, when the slides are up there, answer the questions at the end anyhow.
Okay.
Yeah.
There have been a few different questions coming through, so we'll get to those at the end.
Yes.
Great.
And we'll
okay.
Answers too.
Oh, and the microphone issue is fixed. So you can advance to the next slide. My question for everybody is to just think for a second before I get started with this and before you get started in the challenge. Why are you interested in participating in this? Why did you join this webinar today? What is it about this webinar, this activity, the Zero Waste Challenge, that intrigued you? You can go to the next slide. So when I ask that question of people, one answer I get is that a lot of people have heard about trash in our oceans, plastic especially in our oceans, and this seems to have really captured people's attention and elicited a lot of concern. You can go to the next one. The next one, sorry. And in the teaching and research that I do in psychology, it's an overlap between psychology and environmental studies. I and my colleagues, we have come to the conclusion or the reframing that trash is not an environmental problem. Yes, indeed, you can go to the next slide. It impacts the environment. We can see the landscape changes. We can feel that distress about the destruction of beautiful places, of important places. Next slide. We can also, sorry about this painful slide, we can also see that it has impact on non-human beings, and we can feel the pain that we are inflicting on others. Go next slide. And we also know that trash, especially plastic, is having a whole bunch of different broader ecosystem impacts, and Kristen mentioned quite a few of them. In addition to the fact that plastic is contributing to climate change, trash in general is contributing to climate change. So next slide. But I want to reframe the issue of trash, of waste, as a human behavior issue. So next slide. It's a human behavior problem as opposed to an environmental problem. Next slide. And again, as Kristen pointed out, there are a multitude of impacts that plastic trash, our waste, has on us directly, on our health, physically, physiologically, there's a lot of research showing that we are being impacted by the trash we produce in many ways, and by the simple use and the production and use and disposal of things like plastic. Next slide. And as Kristen also mentioned, our trash is a social justice issue. This is an image from a landfill in India where a whole lot of people make their living and live on top of that landfill and scavenge in that landfill for usable items to sell to survive. And then the next. And even closer to home, we have the HERC, the Hennepin Energy Recovery Center, located next to downtown Minneapolis, where a lot of our municipal garbage is being burned from Minneapolis. St. Paul has a different set of incinerators and landfills. And what is going out into the environment from HERC is having an impact on the nearby community, which is largely a community of lower income people. So next slide. So our trash is a social justice, human health issue in addition to an environmental issue. So with all that not so positive information, let's get to the good part, which is what can we do about this? Next slide. And with some of my students here at Macalester, we have developed this zero waste challenge that my students and I engage in every fall for 10 days. And it has started many students and started me in addition on a long-term journey towards zero waste. And this zero waste challenge is based on a theory in psychology. It's got a terrible name. It's called the trans-theoretical model. It is a theory or a model of how people work through an addiction and overcome an addiction. And so in this model, which is also called the stages of change model, you start in essentially the pre-contemplation or the contemplation phase, where in pre-contemplation, you're not even thinking about there being a problem. And in the contemplation phase, which is perhaps where many of us are, you're realizing, I think I want to do something about this, but you haven't quite started taking action yet. And perhaps where we can all move to today, and where our students move to when they start the Zero Waste Challenge here at Macalester, is we go into preparation phase, where we spend a few days observing our daily actions and thinking about how we can make it possible to change. And once we have prepared ourselves, and there are lots of things you can do to prepare for a Zero Waste Challenge, like getting your mason jar. In the action phase, you are trying to live zero waste. At some point, and this happens for many students, and it has finally happened for me in my life, living zero waste becomes more like second nature. And from there, once we have it kind of down in our own living, in our own lifestyle, we can then move into spreading the word to others, sharing what we're doing in a gentle and generous way, as opposed to a judging or forcing way. So you can go to the next slide. The question is, what impact does this Zero Waste Challenge have? It can be quite transformative for individuals. For the individuals I've worked with who've undertaken the Zero Waste Challenge, it has given them new insights and new motivation. And it also has been a really positive experience in the sense of, I feel like I'm making a difference. But is one person's jar of trash really making a difference in all the problems that we know are out there. We can go to the next. Here is one person who I would show as evidence is somebody whose personal change is having a huge impact. This is Alyssa Erding, who is a former student of mine here at Macalester, who is shown here on a walk we took where we were picking up trash and we went to throw it in the dumpster, and she noticed that there was a box full of usable goods in the dumpster and she jumped in to rescue them. So this is Alyssa living the zero waste life and then some. And she has gone on to start a consulting business to help others and businesses move toward zero waste. So she's having this larger ripple effect. We can go to the next slide. And then the next slide. And what I would say is that Alyssa is one example of somebody who has taken her personal action and moved it into broader spheres of influence, so scaling it up. And so in addition to each of us going on our own personal zero waste journey, we have the possibility, if we think about the ways that we can move our actions into these larger spheres, we can also help scale up the idea of lowering our waste in our communities, in our social networks. We can talk to other people about it. We can do what Climate Generation is doing and share it with a broader network. We can do it within an organization, again, like Climate Generation is doing it, and share the lessons and also share the resources. We can also blog about it, write letters about it. We can join some of the local zero waste groups and help them work for policy change at the local level and beyond. So there are lots of ways that this zero waste journey doesn't have to just be something that we each do as individuals, but it can be something that has broader impact in our communities. So I think that is all. Oh, I guess I do have one more thing to say. And one of my favorite, I guess, metaphors for how social change happens comes from Alan Atkinson, and this is his amoeba of social change image. And the idea is that innovation is happening at this leading edge of society, and innovators are trying to push us in a direction, but the rest of we as a society are all connected because we are social creatures, and change can be slow if it's just a couple of innovators pushing at the front of the amoeba. But if enough of us get behind those innovators and become transformers, and we start to push in the same direction, slowly but surely our whole amoeba, our amoeba of society, begins to move in that direction. And even the worst laggards or reactionaries end up getting moved in a direction toward zero waste. Because of our social connections, society is going to change when enough of us get behind that change. So there you have it. Thank you all, and good luck with your zero waste challenge. And I can't wait to hear the rest of the webinar.
Thanks, Christy.
Great, thank you so much, Christy, for sharing. Our next speaker is going to be Zaria Romero. So Zaria is a senior at Century High School in Rochester, Minnesota, and has been one of the amazing youth leaders that we have worked with at Climate Generation. She was a member of our Youth Minnesota project last year. But one of the reasons why we invited her to speak on this webinar is that she has also been trying to live a zero waste lifestyle on her own. And we thought it would be really great to just hear from personal experiences of those who have tried to take on this challenge, and have her share some of her wisdom with us about, as someone who has actually taken this on. Most of us at Climate Generation haven't done this before, so we're would love to hear from more people. So with that, I will turn it over to Zaria.
Hi everyone, I'm Zaria Romero. So I just thought, excuse me, I thought I would go over some of the challenges and positive things I've found from this lifestyle and how it's like overall affected me. So I'll start off with challenges and end with a positive note. So the first thing that I found was pretty hard is that zero waste can be time consuming. So an example is buying in bulk. So when I started first buying in bulk, you have to think about what containers you need for your food, and along with just grocery shopping in general. Like, it's a lot easier if you're going through the supermarket to just pick out whatever you want from the aisles. But the downside to that is that they're usually packaged in plastic. So buying in bulk is a way to avoid that, but it's definitely more time consuming. And then also I have a picture of beeswax wrap. So this is an alternative to saran wrap, and it's really good. You can use it for all the same things, but after you use it, you have to wash it. So there's a lot of, all the alternatives usually are reusable. They have to be washed, and that can take more time. And another thing I noticed is if I have a get together with my friends and people are using disposable plates, it's kind of hard to be the odd one out. Like if I ask for a regular plate or something like that, because you feel like, oh, I'm the only one doing this. Like, is this okay? Is it weird that I'm doing this? But I just remember and think to myself, like, the reasons why I'm doing this, like, I want to see less trash production and stuff like that. And it makes me feel more comfortable and better about what I'm doing. And another thing is, when I first started like transitioning to this lifestyle, it can be intimidating and explaining what you're doing to people. So I remember when I went to the deli counter to buy cheese, I brought my own container and like asked if I could get it just in there. And I got a really strange look from the person behind the counter. And I was like, oh gosh, this person probably thinks I'm so weird. But he ultimately just told me that they can't package it unless they're told to package it that way. So that was a bummer for me. But after a while, you kind of like get used to strange looks and people asking questions, and it's not as bad as it used to be. So now moving on to more of the positives. It's really cool when you're transitioning to have all these new experiences. So on the left side, you can see that's my mom, and that's the first time we're using our reusable produce bags. And she's very excited about that. And I was probably making the same face on the other side of the camera. And then on the right side, this is when I first got my reusable shampoo and conditioner containers from Plain Products. And as you can see, we're making the same face. We're definitely related. But it was just really, every new thing that you do is really cool. And it was really a fun experience for me just to keep on going. And every step I took, like using the reusable bags and the reusable containers, just gave me confidence to move on to the next step. So you can go to the next slide. And so another positive thing that I've found has gotten easier as time has gone on is I bring a personal like zero waste kit when I leave my house. So if I'm going out, I'll bring my bamboo utensils and a reusable straw, a reusable bag, and a handkerchief that can be used for like as an alternative to a tissue, and also another cloth to dry my hands with after I wash them. And also a thermos. So this usually covers most things. And then if I know I'm going out to eat or something, I'll bring another container for leftovers. And I kind of covered this already, but talking to people about zero waste at first is definitely intimidating, and it was hard for me, but usually I just give a simple answer like, I'm just trying to reduce my waste and things like that. And people usually have positive reactions to that. So it's nice. They're not like, oh my gosh, that's so weird. It's more like, oh, that's really cool. And sometimes they'll even ask more questions about it. And so along with that, the ripple effect that we've been talking about, when I first started this zero waste lifestyle and I told my family, they were like, okay, this is probably going to be a phase and she'll go back to do acting how she usually does. But after I stuck with it, they were like, okay. And my mom and sister even, they started carrying around bamboo utensils and the stuff that I do. So it's really cool to see that. And also, if people are, sometimes I'll get questions like why I'm using a reusable cloth to dry my hands. It's really nice to have that conversation with people and normalize that, talk about like massive amounts of waste that we create and we don't even realize it. So overall, this transitioning to this lifestyle has been a really cool process for me. And when I was first starting out, it opened my eyes to how much waste we really produce, especially when I was first starting, because I wasn't necessarily like prepared and have my zero waste kit when I was ready. So when I went to school one day and I like washed my hands and I was like, shoot, I can't use the paper towels because that'll make trash, but I didn't have my reusable cloth yet. So it's kind of like, for me, it was experiencing it and then finding a solution to that. And it has also allowed me to slow down in this and be mindful of my actions, especially in this fast-paced society that we live in. And yeah, it's just like I said earlier, when you're buying in bulk, you have to think about all the stuff you're going to bring and all your containers. And if you're going out, do I need a container to put my leftovers in and stuff like that? And it's actually really nice to just take time and think about those things. And it has also made me more mindful of what exactly I need, like, and buying more quality over quantity things. And just thinking about that. So yeah, overall, I had a really cool and awesome experience transitioning to this. So I hope that you all have that same experience that I had.
Great, thank you so much, Daria. It's really great to just hear about some of those little day-to-day things too that you might not think about until you start working on this challenge, but to hear from you and others about ways to go around that is fun to share before jumping into this challenge. And so in addition to that, we thought that we would share a few impressions from our fellow staff members at Climate Generation, just to know that you are not alone in this challenge, and that there are definitely, even though we have been thinking about trash a lot over the past few weeks in preparation for this, there are still lots of things that we're nervous about jumping into this. So some things that we're excited about as a staff are being able to take action and taking on this challenge together as a group, and using that to be able to share resources and sharing experience, both with staff members. Can people hear me? Okay. Everyone else. Oh, speak up. So in addition to sharing resources, being able to share this experience, whether that's with your family members, your friends, your coworkers, or just over social media as well. And then a few things that we are nervous about, like Zaria said, grocery shopping. For those who've never shopped in bulk before, it can be intimidating sometimes to walk into a grocery store and not know how to get your food. And so that can be a scary thing for people to jump into. In addition to thinking about just consumer habits, as a country, pretty much, it's kind of hard to avoid that aspect of our life. Zero waste snacking is something that we've been talking about a lot as a staff, and so kind of along what Zaria mentioned about just having time consuming. So not walking into a grocery store and wanting to say, I want something quick for a snack, but not sure how to buy that without getting something that comes in packaging. And then also just mason jars are small, thinking about the logistics of a 10-day challenge, and is that needing to fit all of your waste into a small jar can be kind of daunting. So thinking about how we're going to take that on. And I'm sure that there are lots of other things that we could be nervous about it ahead of time, but those are just a few from our staff. And then we just want to reiterate that this is a really cool opportunity to share this experience with others. Even if you might be the only one of your family to be taking on this challenge, there could have a whole cohort of us together who are collectively taking this on. And so we invite you to share your experience with us over social media, using a few collective hashtags that we can kind of share posts on, as well as we would love to be able to amplify some of your voices in this experience. And so we invite people to send us a blog or a vlog, a video blog, and we would love to share those on our website just as some examples of people across the state and also outside of Minnesota as well who are taking on this challenge. So we thought we would just kind of reiterate a few ways to get started. So Christy mentioned some of these in her preparation diagram, but first is just to take a few days and observe your waste habits. What aspects of your life are you producing the most waste? Maybe observing some areas that you could cut down that are really simple, like putting a compost bin in your bathroom for tissues or toilet paper rolls, things like that. Another option is to tell your family and friends what you're doing. Some of them might even join you in this challenge and might make it easier to take this on together. You'll also want to get your materials together. So a mason jar, if you want to go with the mason jar aspect of the challenge, or some other sort of receptacle. Maybe your goal is 4 mason jars rather than 1 for the 10 days. In addition to getting compost and recycling bins set up at your home, maybe finding out where in the town that you live in to bring composting if that's not accessible at your house. And the last is to set your own goal. Not everyone is ready for 100% zero waste right away, and that is totally fine. So we really encourage people to set a goal for you that may challenge you, but can also be realistic about where you're at. And also we have just on our website, we have posted a link of some just resources for people. Some are books, some are blogs, some are websites to do some extra reading about zero waste, and maybe help you in that preparation phase before you take on this challenge. And then we've also put together a short PDF that has this prep information and a place to write your zero waste goal. And this could be something that you hang up in your home, maybe it's on your kitchen, on your fridge, as a way to just remind you throughout this 10 days about what you're doing and some tips. Sometimes making this more visible makes it a lot easier to be more conscious about your choices. So, yeah.
So as Kira explained well, we'd love to engage with you on this, and we'd love to answer any questions. I see one just came in. I'll check it out in a second. And we'll be actually sending a follow-up email to everyone that registered for this webinar as well. So we'll have links to all the information as well as the video of this webinar if you want to share it. And we'll attach the PDF with the zero waste flyer that we created as well on that as well, so you can use it. So at this point, we'd love to see what questions have come in. And it looks like there is a few. So first question is, can I still recycle, etc.? Also, can I compost food scraps? So the way that we are setting up the Zero Waste Challenge, the answer is yes. That would not go in your mason jar if it's compostable or recyclable. And we've also expanded it to, in our area, something I just recently learned, there are stores like Target or grocery stores that actually take plastic bags, which aren't necessarily, can't go in your recycling bin. And so those since they're not going necessarily in the waste stream for this particular challenge, we're saying yes. And anything goes in this too, so there's not like there's super strict rules, but hopefully that answers your question. Let's see, you see any other ones to answer here? Wow. Let's go to the top.
Are you doing this challenge only at work or at home too? For our staff, we're actually doing this mostly at home. I think we're hoping that a few things at work that are unavoidable, we can, depending on what your job is, it might be hard to change in all aspects of your life for that 10 days. But we're really taking this as the full 10 days, whether you're in the office or at your home, really working on this, trying to live with that, the mason jar challenge for us outside of work too.
How can I find out what happens to my trash? And that's from someone in St. Paul. Thanks for bringing that up. So there's a group, I'm sure Christy is, maybe you're involved with them, but there's a great group called Zero Waste St. Paul, which you can join. And I just wanted to actually highlight something else you could do. This Wednesday is the final vote on a sustainable to-go container ordinance for St. Paul, which, come on, folks, we're in the 21st century. That should have happened long ago. And if you find Zero Waste St. Paul on Facebook, that event is posted and they're asking folks to show up at the city council meeting for that. But they would have a lot of answers to that question, I believe. But I don't know if you have an answer to what happens to my trash, Christy, if you know. This is not things I know.
It depends on who the waste hauler is. I believe Ramsey County, you can find out a lot by going to the Ramsey County website. Oops.
What is the reality of the emissions from PERC? My understanding was that the harmful emissions were filtered before exhausting into the environment. Any knowledge on that, Kira or Christy?
So I can answer. What I know about that is that HERC is well below the legal levels of harmful pollutants emitted by the facility, but they are not at zero. And the question is, what is a safe level? So there's a lot. There are editorials about this. There's a debate in the media, but I don't know. I can't say whether their emissions levels are safe or not, but many claim that they are not. I would say that Hennepin County is doing a lot, but I don't think any incinerator is safe.
Another question we got for Zaria is if you were able to find a place that can get cheese without being coming in packaging.
I'm sorry, did you have to?
I have not, but so I try not to eat too much cheese. And another thing that my mom found at our food co-op is like a make your own cheese kind of thing, but we haven't tried that. I don't know if that's something we'd want to try. It seems like that would become time consuming. But yes, still looking for a place to find zero waste cheese.
I know, Zaria, you're in Mankato?
Rochester.
Rochester, okay. Here in the Twin Cities, at Seward Co-op, they have been willing to give me slices of cheese on just on a piece of the unwaxed butcher paper. Mm-hmm. So it's not always every kind of cheese, but Seward Co-op has been, they've been really great about it.
Okay.
Great. I know another question that came in was, what if composting is not an option? And I know that personally I've had challenges with that. So in Minneapolis, we have citywide composting, like pickup for houses, but if you live in an apartment building, it's not always up to you whether or not your building has receptacles where you can put the compost. And so I know personally I'm bringing it into our office where we have larger composting bins for the building. But there are also places like co-ops that might have composting bins that you can opt into as a community too. So there can be, sometimes you can find ways around composting if it's not an option specifically in your home. And maybe Christy, if you've had experience with that, if you know places to turn people to if composting isn't an option.
I know that here in St. Paul, there is they have a community composting facility in the across the street from Patagonia in the parking lot, which is, I dropped some compost off there this morning and it was overfilled. So I think there's a systemic problem because of the weather. But Eureka Recycling, on their website, I believe there's some information about options for composting.
In St. Paul, you can bring organics to any of the organic sites. So you can drop off. You have to just bring it. And it means it's like meat and milk. It's like all super high. It's a bummer, but for St. Paul, I believe that's Ramsey County. And it looks like Richfield and Hennepin. And I know there's folks here that aren't from Minnesota too, so apologies to that. Any other questions? I've seen a lot of questions coming in or comments just about the importance of washing recyclables, and I do know that that is something that is important for them to be able to use them. If you are recycling them, is make sure they're well cleaned when you put them in. Somebody who shops at Kowalski's in St. Paul says you can buy in chunk your cheese in compostable paper. So there you go. There's one place. I think if there's I'm seeing if there's any other questions we really missed. I'm not seeing any other ones, but if you do have any, please feel free to email us. And like I said, we'll be following up. And we really hope to hear from some of you that you're trying out this challenge and engaging with us and letting us know how it goes. And good luck. And please follow us because we're excited about it. So, and many thanks to Christy and Zaria for joining us because you guys really had the best insights. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day. Have a great Monday.